She apologized for asking a stranger for help at a train station. That silent apology changed their lives forever. She only asked, "I'm sorry." The words came out so quietly that they almost dissolved in the noise of the train station before anyone could really hear them. Announcements echoed from the ceiling, suitcases rolled on the floor, and hurried steps passed in all directions. However, the little blonde girl standing near the platform felt completely invisible. She pressed the straps of the pink backpack on her shoulders, as if she was preparing for a blow she had already received. She was in front of a man who clearly did not belong to that place in the same way as her. His dark coat was perfectly made, his shoes impeccable despite the snow outside, and the phone in his hand seemed much more expensive than anything she had ever owned. His dark hair was neatly combed, and his blue eyes were penetrating, distant, used to looking beyond people rather than at them. His name was Daniel Rose, although she did not know it. To her, he was simply someone who seemed important enough to know what to do. She had gathered courage for several minutes before approaching him. She had practiced the words in her head, repeating them in silence, while her heart was beating so fast that she was afraid to reveal them. But when she finally spoke, everything she had prepared went wrong. Daniel felt smaller than he intended, full of apologies instead of hope. Daniel looked at her, with irritation appearing on his face before he could hide it. He was in a hurry, his thoughts absorbed in lost schedules and calls, and the last thing he expected was to be interrupted by a girl. For a brief moment, he wondered where her parents were, but he discarded the idea with the same speed. "I am not an information desk," he said abruptly, with a sharp and impatient voice. The girl shrugged as if she had been waiting for that answer all the time, her blue eyes fixed on the floor, and she quickly backed away, her blonde hair falling forward to hide her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, this time softer, the words barely audible. "I did not want to bother you." She took a step back, and then turned around before she could say anything else. Her small shoes moved slowly along the wide floor of the station, each step heavy despite her size. The white dress she was wearing seemed thin and wrinkled, inappropriate for the cold afternoon air that flowed in every time the doors opened. The pink backpack pulled at her shoulders, making her lean slightly as she walked, as if she were already tired of carrying more than a girl should. Daniel watched her leave, almost against his will. Something in the way she apologized stayed with him, resonating unpleasantly in his mind. Children tend to demand attention or cry when something is denied to them. She had apologized for existing in his space. He looked at his watch, then his phone, trying to shake the feeling. But when he looked up again, his eyes found her little figure disappearing among the crowd, and a strange anxiety settled in his chest. She was not looking at anyone. No adult was waiting for her. She did not look back, as if she already knew that no one would follow her. Around them, the station was still moving, alive and indifferent. The trains arrived and left. People laughed, argued, hugged each other, and hurried to leave. And in the middle of everything, a little girl with a pink backpack was walking alone. Having learned once again that asking for help came with an apology, Daniel stayed exactly where he was for several seconds, after the girl disappeared among the crowd in motion. His phone was still in his hand, the dark screen showing a call notification that had faded. He told himself that there was no reason to keep looking, that children were lost and found every day, that this was not his responsibility. The thought sounded logical, clean, familiar. It was the type of reasoning that had guided most of his life. Even so, his gaze returned to the place where she had been. Something in the way in which she had said, "I'm sorry," bothered him. It had not been dramatic or noisy, but careful, as if she had already learned that asking for help had a cost. He slightly frowned, sliding his phone into the pocket of his coat, his mind playing her little voice against the noisy chaos of the station. He began to walk towards the exit, but after a few steps he slowed down. Through the glass walls near the waiting area, he saw the girl again. She was sitting on a long metal bench, her feet hanging above the floor, her pink backpack heavily supported by her sides. She did not look around in panic or look for someone familiar. She just sat there, hugging the straps, looking straight ahead as if waiting for something that might never come. Daniel stopped. He told himself that he was just checking, just making sure that she was not in immediate danger. However, his feet changed direction, without a conscious decision, leading him to her. As he approached, he noticed details that he had not seen before. The way her white dress was a little big for her, the faint dirt stain on a knee, the redness around her eyes suggesting that she had cried before and had forced herself to stop. He cleared his throat gently without knowing how to start. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice. "Where are your parents?" The girl slowly raised her eyes. Her blue eyes were calm but tired, without a trace of the panic he was expecting. She studied his face for a moment, recognizing him immediately. Then she sat up, courteously, as if she was someone who had already learned not to wait too long. "My mum told me to wait here," she said. "When?" Daniel asked. "Today," she answered after a pause. "In the morning." The answer fell heavily. Daniel looked around instinctively, scanning the station in search of some sign of an adult looking for a child. But the people around him were moving with the same indifference as before. "Did she call you?" he asked. The girl nodded. "My phone doesn't work," she said, in a low voice. It was hers. Daniel felt that something was tightening in his chest. He sat on the bench in front of her, being careful to keep a certain distance, aware of how big he must seem to her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she answered. "I'm Daniel." She sat there, absorbing the information without making comments. "Why did you come to me first?" he asked softly. "What were you trying to ask?" Lily hesitated, her fingers squeezing the straps of her backpack. "I wanted to know which train goes to the hospital," she said. "But then I forgot the name." Daniel inhaled slowly, the noise of the station fading around him, while her words settled. "Why the hospital?" he asked. Lily looked at her hands. "Because my mum is there," she said. "If something happened, I should have stayed here. But it's been a long time." Daniel leaned back slightly. The polished bench suddenly felt colder than before. The station no longer seemed simply crowded. It felt negligent. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said, his voice now softer. "I know," Lily replied. "That's why I asked." The simplicity of her answer left him speechless. He looked at her again. He really looked at her. And he understood that leaving now would be a choice, not an accident. The meeting he was late for didn't matter anymore. Whatever plans he had, they could wait. "Okay," he said after a moment. "Let's solve this together." Lily looked at him, surprise showing on her face for the first time. "Really?" she asked cautiously. "Yes," Daniel said. "I'm here." She sighed slowly, as if keeping his words in a safe place. And for the first time since she had met him, Daniel saw something change in her expression. It wasn't happiness or relief, not yet, but the fragile beginning of trust, being formed in silence, in the middle of a crowded station that had almost swallowed her completely. They moved through the station together at a slower pace than the crowd that surrounded them. Daniel adjusted his steps to match Lily's short stride. He noticed how carefully she walked, staying close to him without really taking his hand, as if she still didn't know if she was allowed to do so. The noise of the station seemed now louder, more acute, and Daniel found himself instinctively placing his body slightly in front of her every time people passed too close. They stopped near a small cafe next to the windows. The smell of coffee and hot bread cut the cold air coming in from the outside. Lily looked at it briefly, then looked away, as if reminding herself that she shouldn't want things. "Have you eaten today?" asked Daniel. She hesitated, then shook her head. "My mom gave me a sandwich in the morning," she said in a low voice, "but I kept it." "Did you eat it?" he asked. She shook her head again, her gaze fixed on the floor. "In case she came back hungry." The words hit harder than Daniel expected. He asked for hot chocolate and a simple meal, placing it gently in front of her, as if a sudden generosity could scare her. Lily looked at the cup for a moment, the steam rising in the air. Then she wrapped her hands around it, sighing gently when the heat reached her fingers. They sat there for a while without speaking. Lily ate slowly, methodically, making pauses between each bite, as if she wasn't sure if she should finish it. Daniel watched her closely, noticing how she relaxed a little with each passing minute, the tension in her shoulders decreasing as her hunger dissipated. When they finished, Daniel took out his phone and started making calls. He spoke in a low voice, moving away a little but without turning his back completely. Lily heard the sound of his voice, not the words, finding comfort in his firmness. She didn't understand what hospitals or emergency rooms were supposed to do, but she did understand when someone didn't give up. After a few minutes, he came back and knelt down in front of her. "We know where your mother is," he said. "She's in a hospital not far from here." Lily's breath caught short. "Is she—" she started, and then stopped, unable to finish the question. "She's alive," said Daniel softly. "She's very sick, but she hasn't left." Lily closed her eyes tightly for a second, squeezing her lips. Then she nodded as if she hadn't expected another answer. "She told me not to be afraid," said Lily. "She said that adults would help if I asked." Daniel swallowed hard. The memory of his earlier rudeness appeared in his mind. "She was right," he said. "You did the right thing." They left the station together, entering the cold afternoon air. Lily shivered immediately, and without saying a word, Daniel took off his coat and put it on her shoulders. It was too big. The sleeves hung over her hands, but she didn't protest. She adjusted it, the heavy and warm fabric, and for the first time that day leaned slightly towards him. The car ride was silent. The streetlights passed with a constant rhythm, projecting soft shadows over Lily's face as she watched the city slide by. Daniel looked at her occasionally, noticing how her eyelids fell because of the fatigue she had been carrying for hours. "Will she be angry with me?" Lily suddenly asked. "Why would she be?" he replied. "For being alone," she said. "For asking someone else?" Daniel shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "She will be proud of you." Lily considered this, then settled down, her body relaxing against the seat while sleep finally began to claim her. When they arrived at the hospital, her eyes were closed, her breathing slow and constant, her little hands still clutching the strap of her backpack. Daniel parked the car and stayed there for a moment, watching her sleep. He realized then that this was no longer about helping a lost child in a station. Somewhere, between her apology and his silent confidence, something else had begun, something that would not simply end once she met her mother. He gently woke her up, and together they walked to the hospital doors, not knowing that the life that awaited them on the other side would not be anything like what either of them expected. The hospital was quieter than the station, but the silence felt heavier, oppressing Lily's chest with every step she took inside. The air smelled sharp and clean, and the white walls reflected the bright lights in a way that made everything feel unreal, as if she had entered a place where emotions had to be left behind. Lily walked near Daniel. The sleeves of his coat still covered most of her hands. Her eyes moved from one sign to another as if something important could be lost. They stopped at the reception counter, where Daniel spoke calmly and confidently, his voice firm in a way that made people listen. Lily stood by his side, tightening the strap of her backpack. Her heart beat so fast that she was sure that everyone could hear it. She did not fully understand the words that were exchanged, but she grasped her mother's name and felt a knot in her stomach. After a brief wait that seemed too long, a nurse appeared and gestured for them to follow her. Lily's steps became slow immediately. Fear climbed over her back, cold and paralyzing, and she hesitated at the threshold of the corridor. "What if she is angry?" Lily whispered. Daniel stopped and knelt in front of her, getting to her eye level. "She won't be," he said softly, "and if she is, it will not be at you." Lily nodded, trusting his certainty more than her own thoughts, and followed him through the corridor. Her mother lay in the hospital bed, pale and tired. Tubes and cables surrounded her in a way that made Lily's breathing painfully cut short. For a fraction of a second, Lily was paralyzed, fearing that getting closer could break something. Then her mother opened her eyes. "Lily," she whispered, her voice weak, but unmistakably real. Lily ran towards her, dropping her backpack to the ground and carefully climbing onto the chair next to the bed. She took her mother's hand with both of hers, clinging on as if letting go could make her disappear. "I waited," said Lily quickly, words tumbling out of her mouth. "I did not move. I asked someone, as you said." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I know," she murmured. "I am so proud of you." Lily's shoulders finally relaxed. The tension she had carried all day faded as she leaned closer to her mother. Only then did her mother notice Daniel standing quietly near the door. "Who is he?" she asked softly. Daniel took a slow step forward, unsure of his place, but reluctant to withdraw. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I found Lily at the station. She was alone." Her mother closed her eyes briefly, emotion appearing on her face. "Thank you," she said when she opened them again. "I was so afraid that she would get scared." "She was brave," Daniel replied. "Braver than most adults." Shortly after, the doctor came in, speaking in careful tones that balanced honesty with tranquility. Lily did not understand everything, but enough to know that her mother was very sick and that things would not be the same as before. She sat in silence, holding her mother's hand, listening as if the sound of her voice could keep her anchored. When the doctor left, the room felt smaller. The truth settled heavily between them. "I didn't want you to be alone," her mother said, in a low voice, looking at Lily. "That's why I told you to wait there." "I was not alone," Lily replied, looking at Daniel. "He helped me." Her mother followed her gaze, meeting Daniel's eyes again with an expression that contained both gratitude and exhaustion. I don't know how to thank you, she said. Daniel nodded. You don't have to, he replied. I'll stay until you get better. The word even surprised him. But once said, it felt right. Lily lay down on the chair, her small body heavy with exhaustion and relief. For the first time since the morning, she was allowed to believe that asking for help had not been a mistake, and that sometimes an apology was not the end of a story, but the beginning of something that changed life in silence. The following days were drawn in a way that Lily had never experienced before. As if time inside the hospital followed a different rhythm than that of the rest of the world. Morning and afternoon lost their meaning, replaced by visiting hours, quiet conversations, and the constant beeping of the machines that never seemed to rest. Lily stayed close to her mother whenever she was allowed, sitting in the chair next to the bed with Daniel's coat still on her shoulders, even when the nurses offered her their own blanket. Daniel came every day. At first, Lily hoped he would disappear once her mother was found, because that's how things used to be. Adults helped for a moment and then went back to their lives. But Daniel kept coming back, sometimes early in the morning, sometimes late at night after work, always with the same calm presence that made the room feel a little less scary. He brought small things that mattered more than he thought. Fresh fruit, a coloring book and pencils, a warm sweater for Lily that actually fit her. He talked to the doctors when Lily's mother was too tired. He listened attentively, asked questions, and took notes on his phone just like he did during meetings. Only now his approach was completely different. Lily watched him closely, learning his habits like children do. She noticed how his expression changed when he looked at her mother, how his shoulders relaxed slightly when Lily smiled, how he never looked at his watch while he was with them. She didn't understand why he stayed, but she felt the difference it made. One afternoon, while her mother was sleeping, Lily and Daniel sat down together in the hallway. Lily swung her legs slowly, drawing shapes on the floor with the tips of her shoes. Are you very busy? Lily asked suddenly. Daniel considered the question. I used to be, he answered honestly. And now? She asked. Now I am where I need to be, he said. She nodded, accepting the answer without insisting more. That afternoon, Lily's mother woke up more alert than she had been in days. She asked Daniel to stay while they sent Lily to the playroom with a nurse. The room felt different without Lily's calm presence. The weight of the unspoken things filled the space between them. You didn't have to do all this, said her mother softly. I know, answered Daniel, but I wanted to do it. She studied him carefully. Why? She asked. Daniel hesitated. He could have given a simple answer, somewhat polite and distant, but the truth pressed against his chest, uncomfortable and undeniable. Why did she ask? He said. And why did someone have to answer? Her mother's eyes filled with tears, although she smiled weakly. She has always been like that, she whispered, apologizing for needing help. Daniel lowered his gaze, remembering the moment when Lily had apologized at the station and felt a familiar pain settle into his chest. She shouldn't have to, he said in a low voice. When Lily returned, her mother hugged her tightly, kissing her on the forehead. You did exactly what you had to do, she said firmly. You were brave. Lily leaned towards her, then looked at Daniel. Did you stay? She said, almost surprised. Yes, answered Daniel. I'm still here. That night, when the hospital lights dimmed and the corridors became quieter, Lily sat by the window watching the city lights turn on one by one. Daniel sat next to her. Without speaking, simply sharing the silence. For the first time in a long time, Lily felt that something unknown settled into her chest. It was not happiness, not yet, nor was it relief. It was the fragile belief that perhaps she would no longer have to carry everything alone. The change came in silence and without prior notice. As the most terrifying things usually do, Lily noticed it before anyone could explain it to her. In the way the nurses moved faster, in how the smiles of her mother became weaker and shorter, as if it cost too much energy to keep them. The room felt heavier, and even the light coming through the window seemed fainter than before. That morning, Lily was not allowed to sit next to the bed right away. A nurse gently guided her to the corridor, speaking with a soft voice that tried to sound too calm. Lily did not argue. She just sat down and waited, clinging her backpack to her chest, as if it were armor. Daniel followed her, with his jaw set, his steps measured, although something tense and unknown burned behind his eyes. They sat together in the waiting room, surrounded by strangers who pretended not to hear. Lily's legs did not swing this time. They stood still, her feet flat against the floor, as if she were afraid of moving even a centimeter. "Is it getting worse?" asked Lily in a low voice. Daniel breathed slowly before answering. "She is very tired," he said cautiously. "The doctors are doing everything they can." Lily sighed, absorbing the words, although her hands tightened around the straps of her backpack. "I do not like when people say that," she said after a moment. "They say it when they do not know what will happen." Daniel did not correct her, because she was right. The hours passed. The sounds of the hospital continued around him, indifferent and relentless. At some point, a doctor approached Daniel and spoke to him in a low voice, using words that Lily could not fully understand, but that she could feel in the pit of her stomach. Daniel listened, without interrupting, his expression controlled but tense, nodding once at the end. When he turned to Lily, she was already looking at him. "You know," she said. "Yes," he replied in a low voice. "I know." She swallowed with difficulty. "Can I see her?" Lily asked. After a pause, he nodded. Inside the room, her mother seemed smaller than ever, her shallow breathing, her pale skin against the white sheets. Lily walked slowly towards the bed, as if she feared that moving too fast could break the fragile calm that held the moment together. She took the hand of her mother, who felt warmer than usual, and held it carefully. "Hello, Mum," whispered Lily. "I'm here." Her mother opened her eyes and smiled weakly, a smile full of love and apology at the same time. "I know," she murmured. "You're always there." Lily climbed onto the chair and leaned in, resting her head close to her mother's arm. Daniel stayed a short distance away, giving them space while staying close enough to intervene if necessary. He had never felt so powerless, surrounded by machines and professionals, and yet unable to do what he most desired. Her mother's gaze deviated towards him. "You stayed," she said softly. "Yes, I did," Daniel replied. "I promised." She studied his face as if looking for something deeper than consolation. "Please," she said in a low voice. "If I can't, if things don't go as we expect, don't let her think it was her fault for asking." The words settled heavily in the room. "I won't," Daniel said firmly. "She didn't do anything wrong. She saved herself." Her mother closed her eyes, relief appearing on her tired face. Lily didn't cry. She stayed very still, listening to her mother's breath, counting every rise and fall of her chest, as if only the numbers could keep her there. When the visiting hours were over and a nurse gently asked them to leave, Lily got up without protesting, although her hand remained on her mother's until the last second. That night, Daniel took Lily home with him for the first time. The decision was made quickly, in silence, without ceremony. Lily didn't ask questions. She followed him to the car. Exhaustion finally reached her. Her small body curled up against the seat as the city lights slipped through the window. In his apartment, everything felt too big and too silent. Lily stood on the threshold, not knowing where to go. "You can sleep here," said Daniel, pointing to the sofa, "or in the bed, wherever you feel safe." Lily considered this. Then she walked to the sofa and sat down, bringing her knees to her chest. "Can you stay?" she asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." While Lily was falling asleep, her breathing finally slowing and becoming uniform, Daniel sat down in the dim light, looking at the silence. He understood then that, whatever happened, his life was no longer his own. A silent apology in a train station had brought him here, to a promise that couldn't be broken. And for the first time in years, he didn't want to escape the weight of it. The call came early in the morning, before the city woke up completely, before the light decided if it would be kind or cruel that day. Daniel answered from the kitchen, his voice low, his body tense, as if he had been waiting for this moment all night. He listened uninterruptedly, his free hand grasping the edge of the counter so strongly that his knuckles turned white. When he hung up, the apartment felt unbearably silent. Lily was still asleep on the sofa, curled up, an arm wrapped around her backpack, as if it were alive. Daniel stayed there for a long time, watching her breathe, wishing with a despair that he had never before allowed himself to feel that there was a way to protect her from what was coming. But there wasn't. He knelt down by her side and gently touched her shoulder. "Lily," he said gently. "Honey." Her eyes slowly opened, out of focus at first. Then they sharpened when they saw his face. She sat up immediately, fear appearing in her expression before he said a word. "It's my mom," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "She wants to see you," he said, "right now." They drove in silence. The streets were almost empty, the sky pale and uncertain, reflecting the weight that oppressed them both. Lily stared straight ahead, with her hands folded on her lap, her small body impossibly still. Daniel wanted to say something comforting, something that could soften the blow, but every sentence he imagined sounded like a lie. In the hospital, they were taken directly to the room. Lily's mother seemed at peace, in a way that terrified her more than any machine or monitor. Her breathing was shallow, irregular, and when Lily took her hand, she felt how weak she had become. She carefully climbed to the chair next to the bed, leaning close, as if the distance itself was dangerous. "I'm here," Lily said. Her voice trembled despite her effort to keep it firm. "I didn't forget." Her mother slowly opened her eyes and smiled, a fragile and beautiful smile that broke something deep inside Daniel. "I know," she whispered. "Never forget." Lily gently pressed her forehead against her mother's hand, tears finally overflowing. "I was afraid," she admitted. "But he stayed. He didn't leave me." Her mother's eyes turned to Daniel. Gratitude and relief flooded her face. "Thank you," she said, in a low voice, "for listening to her." Daniel nodded slightly. "She did all the brave parts by herself," he replied. "I only listened." Their time was short, draining away in silent moments and whispered words. Lily spoke of small things, of the summer, of the hot chocolate, of how Daniel's coat was too big, but warm. Her mother listened, as if every word was something she wanted to take with her. "I need you to remember something," her mother said softly. her voice becoming weaker. You didn't do anything wrong. Asking for help saved you. Lily felt the tears running down her face. I'm sorry, I said I'm sorry, she whispered. Her mother smiled weakly. You don't have to apologize for needing someone, she said. Promise me you'll remember that. I promise, said Lily, although her voice broke when she said the word. Daniel remained silent, his presence firm, his heart aching with a pain that was no longer his own. When the nurse finally came in and spoke softly, Lily didn't fight or scream. She simply leaned against Daniel's chest, her small hands clinging to his coat as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. When it was over, the room felt unbearably silent. They left the hospital together. Lily now held Daniel's hand tightly. She was no longer afraid to look for it. Outside, the day had come fully, bright and indifferent. People continued their lives as if nothing monumental had happened. In the car, Lily looked out the window for a long time. She's gone, she finally said. Not as a question, but as a truth that she needed to say out loud. Yes, answered Daniel, but you're not alone. She turned to look at him, her eyes red and exhausted. Will you still stay? She asked in a low voice. Even now? Daniel held her gaze without hesitation. Yes, he said, especially now. Lily lay back in the seat, closing her eyes. The pain invaded her in slow and heavy waves. Daniel continued driving, knowing that the road ahead would be difficult, that there would be days full of anger, sadness, and questions, without easy answers. But he also knew something else very clearly. A silent apology in a train station had changed their lives, and there was no turning back from the promise they had made. Time went by, slow and irregular at first, as if it also doubted how to behave after everything that had happened. The days after the funeral were calm in a way that felt strange, heavy, but not empty. Lily stayed close to Daniel, not touching him constantly, but always aware of where he was, as if she needed to see him, to believe that he was still real. The pain did not come suddenly. Some mornings, Lily woke up, calm and thoughtful, helping Daniel to prepare breakfast, carefully placing the dishes on the table, as if the order could prevent things from falling apart again. Other days, she refused to dress, sitting on the bed with her knees close to her chest, her eyes distant and angry with a world that had taken away too much from her without asking for permission. Daniel quickly learned that there was not a single correct answer. He learned to listen without correcting, to stay without fixing, and to apologize when he made mistakes instead of pretending that he knew what he was doing. The apartment changed around him. Lily's pink backpack was no longer next to the door as emergency luggage. It was unpacked. Its contents were organized in drawers and shelves. Daniel bought her clothes that really fit, books that she herself chose, and a small nightlight, because one afternoon she admitted almost by chance that the darkness felt noisier than the light. At night, when the memories slipped in and sleep refused to arrive, Daniel sat down next to her bed, without speaking, just staying until her breathing slowed down and her hands relaxed. School began a few months later. On the first day, Lily was at the door, holding Daniel's hand, her white dress replaced by a simple jacket and shoes, her posture rigid with nervous energy. And if I say it wrong? She asked in a low voice. Daniel bent down in front of her, looking her in the eyes. Then you will say it wrong, he said softly, and the world will not end. She considered this. Then she nodded and entered without looking back. That afternoon, she ran out of the building with a smile that took Daniel by surprise, bright and sudden, like the sunlight opening its way through the clouds. "I did not say sorry even once," she proudly announced. Daniel smiled, feeling that something warm and unknown settled in his chest. "I am proud of you," he said. A year after the night they met, they returned together to the train station. It was not planned as something symbolic. They just had to go from one place to another. Even so, Lily slowed her pace as they walked through the familiar space, her eyes scanning the crowd. "This is where it happened," she said. Daniel felt it. "This is where you were brave," he replied. She stopped near the same bench where she had once waited alone and looked at it. "I thought asking was a mistake," she said in a low voice. "I thought I was bothering people." Suddenly Daniel knelt down next to her, his voice calm and confident. "You asked because you needed help," he said. "That is not a weakness. That is how you survived." Lily thought about this for a moment, then extended her hand and took his. This time, not with hesitation, but naturally. "I am glad I asked you," she said. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "Me too." As they moved away from the station, mixing again with the crowd in motion, Daniel realized that the most important moment of his life had not happened in a meeting room or during a business deal, but the moment he chose to turn around instead of keeping walking. And Lily, once a little girl who apologized for needing help, walked forward knowing something that she would carry with her forever, that asking for help could change everything.